You're listening to episode 182 of the Confident Coaches podcast, the one where you're going to decide if podcasting's for you. Let's go. Welcome to the Confident Coaches podcast, a place for creating the self-confidence you need to do your best work as a life coach. If you want to bring more boldness, more resilience, and more joy to your work, this is the place for you. I'm your host, Amy Latta. Let's dive in. Coaches, I have a super big treat for you today. So you all have me in your ear every single week. And listen, there's 101 different avenues to getting a podcast out into the world, but I'm going to introduce you to the person who helps me get mine into your ears every week. You are getting ready to hear from my podcast producer, Gott Warner. And here's what I love so much about Kara, but one of the biggest things is she is actually also a certified coach. So she not only has all of the technical knowledge and the latest and greatest know-how of what's going on in the podcast world, she can actually help you work with like the thing that's going on between your ears. You know, that mind that likes to tell you crazy things. I personally think she's a breath of fresh air. And you're going to love this conversation. And you are going to need a notebook for this one. We cover just about every question that I think I've ever gotten when it comes to podcasting for the past 5+ years of so many coaches asking me about my podcast. So we cover it all. We cover, you want to know what? I'm going to stop talking and let you dive into our conversation. Okay, coaches, I'm very excited to introduce you all to the person who makes what you're listening to even happen. I have, Gott Warner. Right out of the gate, I'm messing up your name. Can you please say your name for the people in the audience? Because I keep saying it wrong.
Gott Warner.
Gott Warner. Gott Warner. See, I've got a Kara in my life and a Kara in my life, and I just get confused over which one is which.
Oh, it's all right. No big deal.
So Kara is my podcast producer. So she's the one that ensures that you hear my delightful voice every single week. But Kara isn't just like the woman behind the scenes making the technology happen. She is also a certified life coach. She has so much knowledge. And here's why I wanted Kara on today. And I've already told her this, but I'm going to let you guys know. So many of y'all want to start a podcast like the second you become a coach. Kara, and I have thoughts and feelings about that. And I already prefaced this episode with her. We were talking right beforehand. And I said, you might teach me some stuff. Like maybe I've been coaching people the wrong way. So Miss Kara, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm fabulous, Amy. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me just like a little bit about why you do what you do, why you love what you do.
Oh my gosh. What a loaded question that is, Amy. Why?
I'm like, you've heard the show.
Yes, I know. So why I do what I do and why I love it. Oh gosh. So, the thing that I love, first of all, let's start with the podcast. So I love to get behind the microphone because to me, it's very much like, it's a creative outlet for me. I got to be honest. It's like my muse. I love getting behind the microphone and just, like we were saying before, we're talkers. I'm a talker. What can I say?
Guys, we've already talked for 30 minutes before we hit record.
But it's also a way for me to feel like I can have an intimate conversation with people that I want to reach.
Yeah.
And so I think that the audio medium is such an amazing tool for that because in many respects, you've got this captive audience that you don't have in other situations like you have on social media, on Instagram, on a Facebook video, and people click through and click out, I should say, from a video with, I think, what is it, like 3 to 7 seconds? And
you have to really grab people right away. And even when people are hooked into a video, I have found on average, like a solid number of people are clicking out about a third of the way through.
Yeah. But, with a podcast, I think the stats are like 80% of people listen all the way through, which I think is higher than that, because if you're listening 80% of the way, like, no, you're listening to listening to the whole episode. So I think that that's one of the reasons why I really do love to be able to, just to express my message, to reach people that way through this medium. And, it's like, it's a way to really start to create that trust and that intimacy with people. And I feel like I'm a better verbal person than I am a written person. Like, you know? So that's why I love it. That's a few of the reasons why I love it. And, so I got into this in 2014. I started my first podcast because I wanted to.
By the way, guys, in the background, you may or may not hear poor little Lou. He's having a time. He's got a little cough. Kara's going to do her absolute best to do some sound editing. But if you happen to hear, I promise you, Lou is okay. He's got a cough today. He's at
Poor
my feet.
baby.
He's at my feet because he wants mama. So the microphone's picking up his cough. So
See, I love that. That's what I love about podcasting. Like every now and again, I'll do I call them raw and rustic episodes, because
yeah,
I want people to know that like they can let their real life like show on a podcast.
Like guys, I have a podcast record. I have 2 podcast recordings and two group coaching sessions today. And I got a dog with a cough today that I can't do anything about. So
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why I love working with you, Kara, is because you're like, let's leave that in, like stuff that I would tell you to edit out. You're like, no, I'm going to leave it in.
And because I'm a squirrel, but let me go back to so about the, why do I love doing what I do? Like, so what I'm doing as a podcast producer, because so back before this life, I was a magazine editor, and I feel like it's putting together a mini magazine issue every single week, because
Love it.
I love making the thing. I love the deliverable. It's like, look, I made this, Amy. It's for you. And like, there's something magical about that for me. I can't 100% explain it, but I think it kind of also taps into my creative maker sensibilities too, because that's what I do. I'm an artist, I'm a maker, I'm a knitter, I'm a designer. And I bring that into what I do as a podcast producer. And then mixed with being a coach, it's like the best of both worlds. And I knew that when I was a coach, there was something else. I knew I needed to serve in another way in addition to that.
Yeah.
And this was the answer.
Yeah, it's so good. So one of the biggest questions that I get is, when do you start a podcast? So I'm with you. When I'm recording a podcast, with the exception of, and Kara has heard it, when I'm like, hold on, I need to pause for a moment, and then I got to yell at a kid or something. Or I got to,
I love that so much.
Well, you get that done, right? Like,
yeah.
But with the exception of life going on outside the office, it's me in my office, and I'm talking, and I just feel like I'm talking to my bestest friends. I'm telling them they're getting one of the most authentic versions of me. I think even more so than when I'm writing, as you were saying. When I'm writing, I'm a former corporate marketer. So, when I write, my immediate instinct is to write into kind of corporate speak, and I have to de-corporatize it, if that's a word that I just made up.
That's okay. We can make up words. We love that.
I do it all the time. Which is why one of the key things I coach in, is particular Path to 100K, is this idea of act like you're talking to your best friend even when you're writing. But I find that so much easier on the podcast. It's like I'm talking into a phone call, and I'm not, the other person isn't responding to me necessarily. However, I'm going to let you take the wheel on this one, because if anybody who's coached with me, they know my answer to this question, when you should start a podcast or when shouldn't you start a podcast. And your opinion may be different than mine. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that over to you. If a coach is out there and they're picking up and they're jiving with this idea that this is a great best friend kind of conversation, when is, and is there an ideal time?
You said a lot of it, but I can totally add to this. And I think that like just the first thing I want to say about this, like when to start, when would be a good time to start one is that you are totally invested in doing this 1000% for the process and not the outcome. And when I say that, it's almost like I think of this imagery of like you're climbing a mountain, but you're really not climbing a mountain. It's like you're sauntering up this mountain and it's got these beautiful trails and this blue sky and this greenery and it's lush. And you're like, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm going to, look at the people passing by. And I'm really going to like be present for all of it and see like what happens with it and just cultivate this experience. So the commitment of really being in it for the process, because I see a lot of people thinking, oh, my friend said this would be a great marketing tool. And I'm going to like dig into this and like see what happens. Cause like, I would like to get more clients. So I think this, someone said this was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things that I ask people that come on a call with me, and I've spent time figuring out how to ask this question the right way to get, to really pull this question, this answer out. And I'll say, oh, what do you love about podcasting? Why are you so passionate about it? And I've had people say, well, I'm not sure. I don't know, because I haven't tried yet.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like the chicken before the egg.
Yeah.
I see that a lot. And I've even had people come on consults with me thanking me for like, oh, I'm glad I didn't even think like, yeah, I got to play around a little bit. And I'll say, it's time to play podcasting, test the waters, record things on your phone. Like your phone is a very sophisticated device and you can hook up your Samsung mic on your phone, on your iPhone using a little adapter that is easy to find on Amazon. It's called a camera kit adapter, if we want to get technical here. And you can sound professional on your phone, play with a few, record a few episodes and get out of your own way. Like it's about seeing if you really like it first. It's about playing first, right?
I love this idea. Nobody ever told me this, by the way.
Okay. That's something new
because I hadn't met you yet. Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't met you yet. Right. Like I knew I liked talking. So putting a microphone in front of me was not necessarily a problem, but like the idea of like play podcasting with what you already have.
Yes. And that was the other thing I was going to say too, on my list of things is like, yes, you should feel natural speaking to people. That does help. It's like you're like, oh my gosh, I love sharing and talking and I'm really good at doing videos. And now I think it's time to do a podcast, but if it should feel like comfy shoes for you, like, it's like, and if you do feel like hesitant, well, that's because you have to play a little bit.
Yeah. I like the idea of play podcasting for those people where maybe it doesn't come as naturally to them, where the idea of talking, right now I'm looking at you because we're recording this on Zoom, but 90% of my episodes, or, how many ever of my episodes, I'm not looking at anybody. I'm literally just talking. And for some people, that is not a comfort level they have. So I love this idea of play podcasting for people who are like, I don't know, this doesn't really feel like my vibe. What a great way to.
Yeah. And of course, the
waters.
people that are in your programs, right, and Free to Pay Coach and Path to 100K, they get that they're building that sustainable income through building, bringing in consults and clients, building that client base. And if, they're thinking that a podcast is the way to help, doing the job of bringing in consults, it's really, then that's not a good reason to start, right?
Yes.
It's like you really have to have a sustainable way that you're already growing your business, like with what you're teaching, Amy.
Okay. So we're on the same page because that's exactly what I coach people. I was like, make sure you already know how to bring people in. Let me ask you this question. One of my reasons also for telling people to wait a hot minute is the idea of knowing what they're saying. Like, who are they? Who do they talk to? What lights them on fire? When you're a brand new coach, that you want to coach, but how you talk about it hasn't been established yet. That's the whole point of free to paid coach, is to get you talking about it over and over again. So you start to find the rhythms of your voice, and not necessarily literally talking out loud, but like in writing, etc. And I think about that as that's one of my main reasons for saying, let's wait, because you might change how you talk about yourself, your coaching, your story. And do you want those first 10, 20 episodes to, I mean, you're going to evolve anyway. Like, I don't want to say that you have to wait until you're completely evolved, but at least, like, how would you answer that question?
Yeah. And I just, and there are exceptions to every rule, because I'm going to use myself as the exception here, because when I started, I was in a different place. Okay. So 2014, I was like excited about podcasting as a creative outlet. I was like, I didn't even know I had a podcast on my hands, to be honest. It was, oh, I'm going to record on my phone when I go to, on my morning run. And I said, wait, maybe I can turn this into a podcast. So it was, for me, it came later, and I organically figured out the other stuff because I was working as a magazine editor, during the day. And I was like, I just needed a little creative outlet. So I've had exceptions. I've had clients where they're, all my podcast clients are coaches like yourself. And also when I was coaching on podcasting, they were all coaches. And there were some exceptions where they were like really natural on behind the microphone. They looked at it like I always say, spreading the fairy dust when you're about to record. It's an outlet. It's a side gig. It's like, oh, this is like exciting and fun. If that's how you feel, that's okay. Like that, you can do that. You can do anything you want. But what we're saying too is like, don't add another task or a should to like your business. Like, if you want to do this at some point, first focus on developing, like you say, your voice, meaning who you are as a coach, who you are in your business. And then, hey, a podcast. Well, all right, it's time. And it feels natural and it feels good. And you're willing to, commit 1,000% to growing this thing and playing the long game.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I'm hearing you say is, don't make the podcast responsibility. Don't add additional responsibilities onto your podcast. Like, if your podcast was another person in your business, you are now putting the responsibility of that podcast to bring clients in. And it just wants to talk to the world. Like, it just wants to share your voice out into the world. And you're like, but you better bring the clients in, because I heard this is a great way to get clients. And all of a sudden that podcast suddenly has this like heavy weight to it. Yeah. Like a heavy burden.
I love that you say that, Amy, because you know what it reminds me of? Do you ever read the book Big Magic?
Yes.
Where Elizabeth Gilbert talks about putting that responsibility on your art to bring money in. And I think it's like during the get a job or something, get a job, dude. I love that that's part of the book, because it's like your art or your business is this tender thing that deserves your attention. And then all of a sudden you're like taking a podcast and you're saying this thing that just wants to speak to the world in this, special ethereal way. I don't know. I'm getting a little bit off here, but
I'm totally with you. Like in this, like the podcast is a medium through which your voice can be put out into the world, and you can have that impact.
Yeah.
If you aren't already sure and established in bringing clients in, suddenly the weight of every episode just becomes this thing of like, what's the thing I have to say in this episode that's going to bring me the consults by the end of next week? And then it just becomes an entirely different thing, which is not at all what we want it to be.
Well, I get this feeling about you, and I'm like this. I can't stop myself from coming up with ideas. Like, they never stop.
Yes.
That's why, again, I have this lovely little device right here in front of me, which is called an iPhone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, note to self, but don't forget that idea. Oh, that'll be a good one.
Yeah. I have like a running list of ideas, half of which I execute. The other, a third of which I start but don't finish. And there's like these golden nuggets that actually land into my audience's ears and eyes. But yeah,
let's call that podcast security. Seriously, because I love that. I'm like, ooh, that's an episode. But you know what? I have one of the biggest things that people ask me, and I'm going to add this to this part of the conversation. Where do I start? What, like, aside from the fear, or I'm, if anyone's like afraid of when to start and they, but it's like, which episode do I start with? What do I talk about? And I always say, like, just start with who you pretend you're coaching someone. Start with your tools, make those your anchor episodes at the beginning. But I mean, you could do it so many different ways. But my point here is that that's the biggest fear that people have. Well, what's that first episode? I have no idea. And that can stall a lot of people from even starting, because they think they have to have this golden, perfect episode.
Right.
And I'm curious if any of your clients have come up and asked that, because I would think that's that whole perfectionism concern that, because once you get going and you have those initial episodes, it's all a circle. You're all coming back. You're coming back around all the time. It's just all a circle.
Totally. And I think even more so why, make sure you're really honest with yourself as to your intention to starting the podcast, because if there's any weight that this podcast has to be my lead generator, it's going to make that first episode, you're going to put so much pressure on yourself in that episode, and the second episode of, like, because if it doesn't start creating the results of incoming clients and, contacts and clients, you're going to think this isn't working, when actually it's just the beginning of something that could be really beautiful.
And you're just throwing spaghetti on the wall.
Yeah. Really? Yeah. Yeah. And I love you also, that's what I tend to coach people is, like, what are the first 3 to 5 things that people need to know about the thing you help them solve? There's your first 3 to 5 episodes.
Yeah.
And then
exactly.
Go, you don't like, but how do I know they're going to listen to the next one?
We don't
know. There are episodes that I've recorded that I've been like, damn, that was a good one. And I don't often go back and check my stats. I check my stats. It's really only every couple of months, maybe, just to kind of something. Well, hold on. Hey, Lou. Hey, I'm talking here. Yes, we hear you. Okay. Lou has something. Lou would like to start a podcast. I don't check my stats very often. I've gone as long as a year without even paying attention to them. But, like, I will put out an episode and be like, that was my Pulitzer Prize winner. That was it. That's the one that's going to nab me the book deal. And, like a fraction of my regular listeners actually listen to it. And you're like, okay, all right. So maybe I'll talk about the same subject, but through a different doorway in the future. I might send a little bit of extra marketing or two, pieces about it. But in the end, because I'm not putting that weight of every single episode has to be the one that brings people in and has to blow their minds. Instead, what's the one idea you have in your head this week that will help the people you're talking to?
You said it. Yeah.
I just feel like you can't go wrong if that's your focus.
100%. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So anything else that you have because we'll start getting into maybe like the more like how you actually start a podcast and when they would reach out to somebody, such as yourself versus what they could do in the beginning. But, any other thoughts or comments around, like, when shouldn't you, are there, why shouldn't you start a podcast?
I kind of addressed a lot of that just in this kind of when to start, because it was, I was talking about, not going into it just because someone said this would be a great way to market yourself and, get clients. But another thought that came to mind was, if you've got something big going on, like you're in a certification program or, you have a lot of balls in the air. Like if you're going to launch a podcast, you want to invest your time in launching that one thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for some reason, sometimes we can get into this thing like I can do all of these different things. I can do more than one thing. And then we lose the priority of like we're investing our time and our energy into building this thing that's going to really help us build this body of work. But yeah, I mean, I like really addressed, and I guess I'll just kind of emphasize why you shouldn't start one is if, you are feeling wishy-washy, you're not sure, someone said you should, you haven't played a little bit, you haven't tested the waters, and you're not really comfortable with, verbally, with speaking behind a microphone.
Yeah.
Like practice, play, so.
By the way, I do this in my car all of the time. Talk to text.
Oh, yes, I
is
do.
like
Yeah.
I will have an idea and I will just Siri, open a note. I just start talking. Now I have to decipher the talking in Siri's translations at the end of the day, but like there's a great way, or the voice recordings are a great way to, like, if you just have an idea, to just kind of hit that. I'm thinking that's part that like that could be playing podcast right there. And then once you start getting that voice, you could add and Kara, if you don't mind, maybe in our show notes we can kind of include some of these techie points that you're leading us to, like the adapters for this, that, or the other.
Totally.
You can tell that I'm totally speaking the high tech language over here.
Oh no,
The doohickeys,
the
the
doohickeys,
dimdavers,
the gizmos. And there was another thing that just came to mind too, before I forget. But why you shouldn't start is if you're like really, really stuck on the metrics, because okay, that's a whole other conversation, Amy. We could literally do an episode about metrics and the problems with metrics, and believing in metrics as your only course, and then, or your only measurement. And then you invest all your energy into the metrics doing something, and they don't, and you give up in the first 3 months. We call that pod fading. And then that's where I put on my life coach hat, and I help people to avoid the pod fade. That's where I step in 3 months so that we can avoid it. But it's like, let's check ourselves when it comes to the metrics. So, I just recently went to Podcast Movement in Vegas.
Yes.
Wow. Vegas. Okay. That's a whole other. Yeah. So, but Rob Walsh, who is either the founder or co-founder of Libsyn, but he's a very like no nonsense kind of guy. So when he does a breakout session, like he's telling it like it is, and his session was called the BS of metrics. So basically, people can buy metrics. Okay. You can literally buy extra metrics and fake metrics. And of course, now people can, go into Canva and pretend they have metrics. And your metrics can look inflated. And it can be because maybe you have one user that is looking at your back catalog, or you have someone new that came in, or someone that's always listening to your podcast, but they're listening to multiple episodes, in 1 week, or they're going into your back catalog, and a variety of other things. But that's one of the ways that your metrics can get skewed. And if you're basing things on metrics, like, yay, it's happening, or no, it's not.
Yeah.
You're missing the point.
So good.
The 100% missing the point of podcasting and growth. Like, how do you know you're not growing? If you're basing growth only on a number, like you're totally missing the game. You're totally missing the point. Then your episodes, and I hear this in people when I'm working with people, like I can tell when they've lost the meaning and the connection in their episodes, because they're focusing on metrics or something else. Like, I got to grow. And then their actual episodes become like plain vanilla. But when you're focusing on, the bottom line is content is still king. You know that saying, right?
Yes. I don't think content is ever not going to be king.
You have to focus on the audio content as the main event, the main driver. That's what people want.
Yes.
And the, transcripts, they're there for SEO, right? Great. Some people read them, but it is you and your intention behind everything that comes out of your mouth.
Yeah. 100%. I am so glad you spoke to that, because even I was like, sometimes I'll go check my metrics. I had to learn real early to not worry about what they said. Um, I think when I first started, I'm on 100. This episode's going to be, I think
182.
182. And I did 76 episodes of another podcast before this. So,
Oh, wow. I
yeah,
did not know that. I
you
just
did
learned something
Business
new.
Women Losing Weight, which I don't think it is out there. I did 76 episodes of it. So I've
Wow.
got like fast math, 250, 260 podcast episodes under my belt. I had to learn that I couldn't, it's like, I think metrics are like the number on the scale.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I was just thinking about that today. I thought if this comes up, this is going to be the analogy for
Yes.
this. Okay, go. You're reading my mind.
Yes. Metrics are like the number on the scale, and possibly even the number in your business bank account balance. It's an indication of something,
Mm-hmm.
but we oversimplify it all of the time. That, when I was coaching weight loss, and I'm experiencing this right now where I've completely shifted. I've had a big weight loss experience, a lot of health stuff. I've talked a little bit about it on the podcast, more so in like my Instagram stories, but that scale's only moved down 6 pounds of the 46 that I gained, but I'm an entirely different person than I was 7 pounds ago based on my movement. I actually stopped paying attention to that because I realized that I was deciding whether or not what I was doing for my body was good or not based on what the scale said at the end of the week, as opposed to, I actually just want to feel really good in my body. I just want to be in love with my body and love it so much. And I think it's the same kind of thing. Like, it's the same conversation. It's the same thing I would say about your business. Love your business so much, love your content so much, and know that the results are going to come as they come in. And that number is never the gauge of necessary. And I want to be really clear, because there are a lot of coaches, particularly in our circles, that are like, the number is the indicator whether or not it's working or not.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I kind of think you can have 100 listeners a week, and if 75% of them are hanging on your every word, that's amazing. As opposed to, you could have 1,000 listeners every week, and you got like, maybe 1 to 200 people who are checking. It's kind of that differential of like, the quality of that listener is so much more important than the quantity.
Yeah. Well, I heard it phrased to me once before, develop your own squishy metrics.
Oh, okay. Tell me more.
Right? Like, how are people engaging with you? Are they reaching out to say, I love you, you changed my life, or whatever? I loved when you said X, Y, and Z on a podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, it's the human touch, right?
Yes.
The human element, the human, like, looking at that metric. And then, if you want to look at the numbers, just like on the scale, you're like, yeah, there it is. Like, in this case, we want to see it go up as opposed to the scale going down. But it's the same idea where it's like, you see that curve on the graph as opposed to, fuck, I gained another pound. Like, I weighed myself yesterday.
Yeah.
And today I'm a pound big. It's like, oh gosh.
I know.
I mean, and you know what? Even though logically we know that it's such bullshit, like, you can't gain a pound in a day, but our brain plays the most, like, what's the word? Maniacal. That was the word.
Yeah.
Maniacal games.
And I'm kind of seeing like, well, last week's episode got, 100 listens, and this episode only got 50. And so we'll just be like, oh my gosh. Well, so many factors could be in there. There could be so many different reasons. I think about all the podcasts I listen to every week. I don't necessarily listen to them, every single one of them, on the day they drop. I go through periods with podcasts. I will come back to podcasts. Like I think it's really important for us to think about how we consume content and know that that's how our,
Yes.
our audience is the same.
Yeah.
Our audience is the same. I do have something just popped into my head. There's something that I was doing for, and because you had my podcast that I was doing for a really long time. And I can't remember where the idea popped into my head that maybe it wasn't the best thing to ask of my audience. So just like for poops and giggles, or maybe it doesn't matter. This idea of like, go onto social media and share this episode and tag me and tell me what you really needed to hear. Like the whole idea is you're hoping that people will share your episode. But then as I was like, I've been putting that at the end of, I don't know, a significant number of my episodes. And I started thinking, should we be doing that? Should we just be like, hey, hope you loved it. And then, obviously mine, I don't have advertising on my podcast. I don't make money off of my podcast anyway. There are podcasts who certainly do affiliate marketing or Patreon or even ads. So the way that I, make money, quote unquote, off my podcast is I, invite you to take the next step at the very, very end of like, go sign up for the thing. And, eventually I do get clients, who started with my podcast, but are we asking too much of our audience when we tell them in the episodes, hey, go share this with the people that need to hear it?
I don't think so. As
Okay.
long as you're not attached to the outcome.
Okay. Maybe guys, I think we just found the theme of this entire episode.
Yeah.
Do
Right?
it because you love it and you love them, not because you want the outcome of it.
Yeah. You're like, hey, maybe someone will reach out and let me know. And that would be fun too. But
Yeah.
I don't have any attachment to what happens. And just like you were saying about, people that monetize and do all these other things and they do Patreons but it's like, if that comes later after you've been having so much fun and you're taking a bubble bath, that's an analogy I use a lot for my podcasting and all the things I love to do. If it feels like a bubble bath, it should feel like a bubble bath, right?
Oh, I love
And
it.
right. And if you're feeling that, and then as a offshoot of that, somebody wants to advertise or you start getting a lot of stats are great and advertising works or then great. But it's like that's maybe later. Like, and that's from not expecting an outcome. That's from
Yeah.
not expecting an outcome, It's like
Yeah.
maybe some of those things, but it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter because, this space, there's a lot of people in the podcasting space. And if we start competing and like, I got to do this and that and raise to the top. And if we just take a different approach, and remember who we're trying to reach on our micro level. And also how can I make this fun? How can it feel like a bubble bath? How can I enjoy this process? Then, there's going to be your level, your definition of success, which doesn't necessarily have to translate into more clients, more dollars, more listeners right away, more of anything other than
Right.
what a beautiful process this is. How it means so much.
I love this so much. As you have heard in my content shift over the past 6 months or so, is this idea of playing more to sell more. And I love this idea of like your business as a whole feeling like a bubble bath, feeling like, and I think some people have a hard time with this because like maybe you do launch something and no one signed. Like maybe you do advertise a free webinar and no one shows up. And maybe you do launch a podcast and you only have 5 listeners and your mom and her 2 best friends or 3 of them, And so we will be like, this doesn't feel like a bubble bath, Amy. Kara said bubble bath, and instead this feels like a sludge through mud. And so I love this idea of it is still work. You still have to be thoughtful about why people want to listen to you talk. Like even me coming on here. So I'm giving everybody who has listened to all my interviews, like I preface every interview of, asking the person that I'm talking to, think about the end listener. What do they want? Why do they want to listen to this episode? It's not just because y'all want to hear Kara and I chit chat and laugh about our lives, but there's purposeful content. And so you still have to learn how to craft that. But I think when it's coming from this place of play or this kind of bubble bath kind of, it's in touch. Like when I think about why I would take a bubble bath, it's like, I'm so with me. I'm detaching myself from all the noise out there and I'm connected with me. So even if somebody says that and is like, Amy, there ain't nothing about my podcast or my business that feels like a bubble bath right now.
Well, you know what? And that's the thing. It's like, sometimes there's not as many bubbles, cause like you said, it's still work and there are going to be days when you feel like shit, but it's not going to feel like you're sludging through mud.
Yes. Yes.
There's a difference
feel like
there.
you're sludging through mud.
Because I have days where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to record or I don't know, whatever, like, but I've been doing this for over 10 years. Right. So it's like the desire to keep showing up is stronger than like those every now and again, those feelings of like, yeah, I'm not feeling it today. So what? Yeah, it's fine. You'll make it work. You'll make it happen.
Yeah.
You're scrappy, be scrappy too. That's the thing. It's like, I think when we get too rigid in the way we think we're supposed to do it, and we're supposed to do the podcast and we're supposed to do it because that's what they say you do. But at some point, somebody decided out of the blue, out of the ether, out of nothing, this is how a podcast is. This is, oh, by the way, let's call this a podcast and let's create show notes. And the only reason why show notes have bullets is for SEO.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. To attract the SEO, right?
Well, and for me, I like bullets because I don't like to read long paragraphs of stuff.
And that too.
I'm never going to read long paragraphs, but I will read some catchy bullets, which I think let's get into the, okay, we know we want to do this, the coach right now, you're listening to this and you're like, okay, I'm not going to put any pressure on my podcast to perform for me. I'm going to I totally understand what they're saying about detaching from the results. I've played around with my voice, or I'm already comfortable with that. I'm ready to go. Mm-hmm. How do they start a podcast?
So do you want the simple bare bones version or like the Cadillac? I got both. So we already started talking a little bit about like using your phone, playing, right? But let's just say, I mean, I'm going to go with this because to me, this is fun. So I'll give you both. I'll give you the bare bones and the Cadillac.
Well, I think it's important. I think you would agree. There's 100 roads.
There's no one way.
Yeah. There is no one way. So anybody who's like, oh, here's the one way. What is it? Yeah. Pat Flynn's 27 steps to creating a podcast or whatever.
Oh yeah.
The first time I started my podcast 1,000 years ago, and that's what came up. I'm like, 27 steps.
That's so cool. And we've already mentioned Pat Flynn. So yeah, he's going to get a plug. I was on his show 3 times, by the way.
Stop it.
Not kidding.
Oh my gosh. It's amazing. I mean, I ran into him and his little boy at the podcast movement in Philly.
I did. Oh, so I did too. That's so awesome.
Were we both in Philadelphia at the same time?
No, I didn't go. I went to the first one in Chicago. And I have a picture of me with Pat. And I was like, because I was wearing the Ask Pat t-shirt and it was like 9 a.m. in the morning and I was like on my phone and he walks up to me. Nobody else is around. He goes, hey, how you doing?
Stop it.
And I'm like, what? Oh yeah. It was. So anyway,
2016, 2017, when I started my first podcast.
Okay.
2016, probably. I Googled how to start a podcast and Pat Flynn's 22 or 27. It's a ridiculous number. It's a ridiculous number, but I was like, okay, this is what I do. So my first podcast was self-produced. I did all of that all by myself. Yeah. And I did it. There's now so much more technology that has simplified the process than existed back in 2016 or 2017. So I think when you ask which version, I think it's really important that people know there are many roads to this. Kara is like, this is your genius. This is your milieu. And so, yeah, I think deliver kind of maybe a simple way? And maybe that's the question. This is like, maybe that's the question. How do people know when they need to go more Cadillac-y?
Okay. Well, as we're sitting here and we're talking about this, I'm thinking of, I don't have to talk total bare bones because I already talked about playing with your phone and getting one of those little adapters for your Samson mic or whatever mic you want to use. But we're talking to coaches who probably have a Samson mic, right? Maybe they're using that ear, you know what I'm talking about, like with the
Oh, like
little
the little thing
mouthpiece.
that's got like the Britney Spears microphone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. The life coach school uses it, or that kind of mic or whatever. And we're all on Zoom, right? You can take whatever mic you're already using for your coaching business, for your coaching practice, right? Use that mic. Don't go out and get anything else. Record inside of Zoom. You can do that by yourself. You don't have to be doing it with someone else with you. You just click on Zoom. You just don't turn on the video unless you feel like it, but you just record the audio. Then you use that recording. And then what you can do is you can do some really simple editing in a program like Audacity, which is
Mhm.
free.
Mhm.
I don't know if you're from, or GarageBand. I know you use GarageBand,
Mhm.
Amy, and that's free with a Mac. So that's the simplest way. Keep the editing. Like, you don't even have to edit anything, I mean, if you're like, okay with like a few ums and ahs, I mean, big deal, and smack some music, intro, outros on the end. You can do this, by the way, if you use an app, if you use Anchor. I don't know if if you know of
Yeah.
Anchor, Amy, because
Anchor
you
was
can put
something.
some
Yeah.
pre-made music on there.
Oh, I didn't know that. So Anchor came out after I first started producing, or I didn't know about it when I first started producing. And I remember thinking, oh, I wish I had known about that when I got started, or I wish that was around when I
Yeah.
got started.
So that's cool. And also Buzzsprout is very cool, because what you can do on Buzzsprout, this is what I recommend my clients if they launch with me. I set them up on Buzzsprout. And what you can do there is, let's say you have your music and your little voiceover that you have with your music, kind of put those on. We call them bumpers. Did I say bumpers? We call them bumpers. That's podcast speak for your
Mhm.
intro and your outro. And you can upload those to Buzzsprout, and they are always on the end of every episode automatically. So all you do is talk into the mic and upload it to Buzzsprout.
Amazing. How easy is that?
It's so right. So easy. So this is if you're like, I don't need to go crazy on editing, and I just want to get it out there. I'm living my natural life. I might say, I might say, who cares? you
Mhm.
know? So that's the simplest way to do it if you're going to do it yourself. And then, like Amy said, I think Pat Flynn's program is still out there somewhere. It's still out there for sure. Like, just to learn some little ins and outs with editing, but you can go to YouTube. I'm telling you, it's amazing what you can learn on YouTube, like how to edit in GarageBand, like how to remove little bits of audio. It's so easy to do. Then you submit your podcast to Apple. Super easy. Like, so on Buzzsprout, they have a really great knowledge base. And one of the top things that they have in there is how to submit your podcast. Literally takes a minute and your Apple ID, and you submit your podcast. And what that does is you wait like 24 hours, they give you an answer, and then you're live to the world. And then your podcast literally from that point can go to all the different players. Like, there's a few that you have to do manually, like Spotify and I think Amazon Music, but like, think of Apple like the hub or the middle of the wheel, right? And then all the players are like spokes, or
Yeah, I so that's still the same. I do remember
like
that.
the
Like
aggregate.
yes, yeah, once you got it submitted to, because I was like, how do I get it on all of these players? And I so that still stands all these years later, that once iTunes, and is it still called iTunes?
Well, it's called Apple
Apple
Podcast now, which
Podcasts
is a
now,
lot
yeah.
harder to say. Apple
Apple
Podcasts.
Podcasts. So once Apple Podcasts says yes, it like magically shows up on non-Apple podcast players all over the world. And does Buzzsprout, because I know Libsyn does, like has like it's set up in your account how to like, do you want it to add to Spotify? And then you follow those steps. Do you like, so anybody that it doesn't automatically push out to once it's approved by Apple, a Buzzsprout or an Anchor or whatever you use has that built in that will help
It
you
is very
get it out.
user friendly. It's very
Yeah,
user
yeah, yeah.
friendly. I think Libsyn, because it's the gold standard, it was like that's the place that all the podcast folks, like it's been around like for a long time.
Yeah.
But Buzzsprout and Anchor are so user friendly, like simple, walk you through, hold you by the hand, take you by the hand for every
Yeah.
single step. And it doesn't have to take 3 months. It doesn't, like these things that I'm talking about. I mean, not kidding you. Like you could start your podcast in a day or a weekend. Oh, a weekend. You could.
You could. I mean, really the
only
longest part is waiting for Apple Podcast to get back to you to tell you, yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Well, yeah. And that's like 24 hours, sometimes longer. But I mean, the only thing in your way is this thing between your ears, this like brain of yours that's saying, no, I have to wait. No, I have to do this. No, I'm not sure what I'm going to start with. All the things we were talking about earlier in this episode, right?
Yeah.
And so if you really wanted to start and you were really motivated, you could literally start, you can do everything in a weekend. And the other things like the launch, creating a launch team and maybe doing a podcast tour and all this stuff. That's nice. That's nice stuff that you can do. And that will help create a nice wave out in the media, out in the digital world, space. Right. But it's really, that's in addition, like first you got to create the beautiful podcast and just get out of your own way. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
It can be this simple.
And if I can add on, to the marketing side of thing, basically the idea here is you could get a podcast up and running with your phone, a mic adapter, Anchor, Buzzsprout, record an Audacity or GarageBand, super simple editing, throw up a little intro, outro, or bumper, and then it can be up live. You can still plan on the marketing side of things, reach out to, peers, your list, etc. And your podcast is going to already be out there in the world, but you could still create a quote unquote launch date in the future and
exactly.
And build up that marketing, like, and like give, start talking about it 2-3 weeks in advance. This is coming. Your podcast can already kind of be out there in the world.
Yeah. And how that's like, think about it. Why wouldn't you want it to be that way? Because then you have a calling card already. You're already talking about, just because it's already out there. It's not like, whoa, like back in the day, Amy, you remember when you started and you had this 8-week window and it was like you were a new podcast and then you have this opportunity to be a new and noteworthy, but that's not a thing anymore. It's just not.
Thank God.
It's not a thing. I mean, it is, but it isn't, if you know what I mean. It's like,
it was so stressful when I was launching that damn podcast in 2016, 2017. It was like, we have to create this massive push because if you didn't make it on, and by the way, I didn't make it into new and noteworthy in Apple iTunes way back in the day. And I've got 250 podcast episodes under my belt and I'm doing just fine.
Yeah. And when I started in 2014, it was a thing and it was fun. I did see myself in that top number 2. I had a number 2 spot. I was number 1 and I didn't take the screen grab. Like, no. I was like, what's wrong with me? So I have proof, everybody. I have proof.
That's amazing. So that whole idea of just,
but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. It's kind of like all data. It doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah. And really it's about the platform and the influence. Like those are the people that are getting into those spots now.
Yeah.
And really that's kind of sickening when you think about it. It's like, I don't need to really compete with that. That doesn't matter.
Okay. So they can grab their iPhone, simple mic, record in either Audacity or GarageBand, edit.
Let me correct that for a second to the phone, because you can use GarageBand, I think, with an iPhone, but it's different. It's a little bit clunky. I don't like it on the phone, but you can use, and this is going to be a long link list, by the way. Thank you very much. But since I'll be doing it, but it's easy voice recorder. is notes to text. Remember you were talking about that, Amy?
Yeah.
You can use the notes to text app. Make sure you set it on a wave or MP3 so you get the best quality. Use that camera adapter. Use whatever mic you want to use. Hey, you know what? Even your earbuds work really good. Believe it or not, I've had coaches come on with earbuds, the iPhone earbuds. But you plug in your mic, you use that camera kit adapter, you open up the recorder on your phone. It could be Easy Voice Recorder. There's another one called Ferrite, Ferrite, which is made for podcasting. And you can do it on your phone or on an iPad. And then you're off to the races and you can record with your phone.
That's
using
right.
that.
That's right. I was mixing up the phone with the Zoom idea too, because the
Yeah.
other idea is you get your whatever you're already using for coaching, and you can record in Zoom, and that's what you can download that file over into
GarageBand
or
if you
whatever
want.
to edit.
Yes.
And then you're going to get it out into Buzzsprout or Anchor. You're going to put it out there. It's going to be launched. When does somebody need to say, I need a Kara in my life? I mean, okay, so first of all, you need a Kara in your life right now. Just start following her because she's going to be dropping amazing podcast tips all the time to you anyway. But when do they actually when should they consider reaching out to somebody like you who is a podcast producer?
Yeah. I find that the people who reach out to me they've already decided I am totally invested in focusing on my content, my amazing, epic content, the spoken word, reaching my people, feeding my baby birds, and letting the podcast expert do their work, do their thing. I don't want to get in the weeds. I don't need to be in the weeds. My job is to serve my clients as a coach and speak my message. So you see the value in that. You see like the value in handing off the production, the editing, the transcripts, the show notes, all the back end stuff, those pieces of the puzzle to someone else. So you can just, keep doing being the coach, showing up as that coach.
Yeah. So when somebody works with you, you can do the production, but you can also just coach them through the launching. Cause that's where I think I first got connected with you, was talking with a client that I was working with. I was a guest instructor in somebody else's program. I'm talking about Laura.
Laura Johnson?
Laura Johnson. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So it's a really funny story because Laura is sort of like the impetus, the spark for all of what I do now, because she is we're still coaching. It's funny. She's one of my clients. So the sort of the trajectory for me was when I left the magazine, I was a mindset coach. Then I got certified as a life coach in 2020. And then people were like, you're a podcaster. Oh, I need help with my podcast. Can you help me with my podcast? And then I finally zeroed in on my niche as a podcast coach. So I was helping people and coaching them through all the steps. So they were doing the steps and I was helping them to get through the mindset, all the stuff we were talking about.
Yeah, all of this stuff.
Like, okay, let's figure this out. Like what's holding you back from getting started and thinking this isn't the right place to start. But anyway, so then she launched and I was trying to help her to find a producer and a VA and all these other things. And there was always this little birdie on my shoulder or whatever, this little thought that was like, you're good at this. You love this. This is like, maybe you should do the work. You should be the producer. And so one morning I woke up effortlessly and I walked right to my computer and I texted Laura. I said, I'll just do it. I'll be your producer. How's that? And she was like, within a minute, wrote back, yes, 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 yes. Love, 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 love. And then it was like literally the floodgates opened, Amy.
Yeah.
And yeah. And it's been like over a year that I've been strictly doing the production only. And I love it. I pinch myself every day because I'm just like, this was the sweet spot. So yes, I'm still coaching, but I'm baking the cake for you too.
Okay. So good. Yeah. So
Right.
when I think about So for people who are out there going, oh, so, hiring somebody, not hiring somebody, I know that for me, I produced my first podcast. I know I can produce a podcast. I know that if something goes wrong, I can get an episode out into the world. It may not be as slick and polished on the outside as what Kara does everything for me, because I haven't done it in a while, but I used to do all of those things. And I tend to coach people that way of like, know how the aspects of your business work. If you keep loving it, follow Kara for all of her amazing stuff and advice, and listen to her, and she's amazing, and connect with her. And then if you come to a point, I'm sorry, now my voice is going. Between Lou and me, this is quite the episode. By the way, guys, Lou has spent the majority of the time on my lap, because that actually got him to stop coughing, because he was just so stressed out from all the coughing. So, there just came that point where I was like, I'm ready to hand this off to someone. And it's clear that you know what you're doing and you're good at what you're doing. And if I can go ahead and give you a plug, which I absolutely will, because it's my show and I can do whatever the hell I want to do. You are amazing at if I have a problem or an issue or a question or anything along those lines, your ability to be flexible and helpful of like, what if we do this instead? Or what do you think about this idea? I noticed, because I've used a different podcast producer in the past, and you're like, well, I know that you've been doing it like this the whole time, but here may be some other ideas that could save time, save money. That might have been a great idea back in 2017, but in 2023, that's not necessarily needed anymore. So I think that kind of knowledge that you have, as well as like even you and I started this conversation with possibly even changing up how we're currently doing, how you've been doing my podcast for me for over a year now, or did we just start in September?
I think it's been longer.
I know we started in September,
because I reached out. We started the conversation. I think there was a month or so, like we were just kind of like conversing back and forth. And I remember I think it was last summer. So this summer, I think it's going to be
a year.
Yeah.
So like your willingness to, the point I'm trying to get to is your willingness to evolve your craft.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Thank you. I
to
appreciate
me,
that.
That to me is super important. And I don't know if you listening really have heard some of the key messages that have gone unsaid in this episode, which is the evolving of your voice. I think, Kara, your story is and I was here, and then I was here, and now I'm here. That willingness to kind of listen to yourself of like, I'm doing this thing over here, but what lights me on fire, what gets me really excited to talk with other people, might be different than what you first started out. Like, I was listening to you talk about your path, and I'm like, I hope the other listeners are listening to what, like, there's so much gold in that. And even now that you're working as my podcast producer, your willingness to evolve and try new things, even if it means like, we're not going to be doing this whole thing we've been doing the whole time. And you don't have to pay me for that anymore, because you shouldn't be paying me for that anymore, because that's silly. Let's not do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I think that's why, I really do love this medium, and I'm so passionate about it. And that's why I go to things like Podcast Movement, and I'm always reading about podcasting, and it's changing like the speed of light all the time.
Yeah.
And I care about what's going on. Like, it's just, I don't know why, but I geek out on all of it. And I get to bring that to you, and I get to bring that to my other clients. And so it's almost like, I always think of like, when you go to an accountant and the tax laws change, like, I'm just like, I don't want to deal with that. Like, no, thank you.
Yes.
But when it comes to podcasting, I'm like, don't worry, I got you. Like, I know
like,
what's going on.
I know all of the things. And this might be a great time, because I haven't told the people yet about the project you've been working on for me for the past couple of months, because take a little bit of time.
It's taking a little bit of time, a little bit longer than I thought it would, but yeah, we're getting there. And
and they should be, by the time this airs, for the most part, everything should be up. Like, they don't know what we're talking about yet. So
I know. I'm like, wait, should I even?
Yes. All right, we're going to go ahead and say it because at least 90% of the goods are going to be there. That
Yeah.
the Confident Coaches podcast is now on YouTube.
Yeah. It's
That
already there. It's
it's
already
already
there.
there. It's already
Like
there.
78 episodes are there. And it's very time consuming to get each episode up there because I have to, like I think I said to you, Amy, I have to do one at a time and wait a couple minutes between each
Yeah.
episode.
Or
They come up in a jumble. They don't upload correctly. They don't upload in number order. So yeah. So some of the early episodes may like be a little bit out of order because I had to figure that out. But by the time we get current, it's just obviously it'll be a lot easier because only one a week come out. Once a week they come out, but getting them all up. Yeah. It's been interesting.
It's been a project, but it's like, this is the kind of thing of like, it's an idea that I had. I didn't even share it with you. And then you were like, this is an idea that we could do. And I'm like, actually, I've been thinking about it too. And then, so like, these are the kinds of things that, you don't have to have a podcast producer in your pocket, but do make sure that you're following somebody. And I strongly recommend Kara, who has her pulse on what's happening, because if you are a life coach, it's not your job to be like, know everything that's going on in podcasting. Podcasting is a way to get your voice out there. So even if it's just paying attention to what Kara is saying about what's going on in the industry and sharing her tips that she shares in her newsletter. And then if you do get to a place and again, I'm really making a shift into my business, into helping coaches become profitable coaches, that they're not spending every single dime that they have. So like, let's get you to a place where you have that revenue coming in so that you can turn it over to somebody like Kara, who's going to take your podcast and she's going to just love it like the little baby that it is and give it everything that it needs and get you up on YouTube and all, get you up on all the internets so that everybody can find you everywhere.
Even on the level of websites and things like that. I mean, I know that you're, going through some transitions there, but that I've helped my clients with that. Like, how can we optimize and, think smarter, not harder when it comes to what your podcast website looks like. So all that stuff. But anyway, this is going to be a long episode for me to edit.
I know. Amy. I'm just looking at this going, oh shit, we went over the hour time. Damn it. Okay, so this is the fun thing about interviewing your podcast person who now has to take what we've just done and like turn it into something. And particularly like it was everything. I've had a cough. Lou's been barking. Lou had it honked the whole time. It's been a time, friends. So on that note, Kara, it took me an hour. I will finally call you Kara and not Kara.
Yay.
Kara, how can people connect with you?
It's super simple. So they can just find me on my website, gottwarner.com. And I'm there, I'm Kara Gott Warner everywhere on the internet, but the best way to find me is go to my website. You can see the different levels of my service, very clear, and just get a feel for, what it's like, what it would be like to work together. And that's it.
Super simple. I want to make sure it's Kara. Gott is with two T's, Gott, and then Warner, Warner. Yep. So Kara Gott Warner. Make sure that you connect with her, follow her on social media, get on her newsletter, and then, take everything that we've said in this past hour. And obviously you're going to hire me to coach you on your business decisions so that I can go, it's time for a Kara in your life. Let's go do it.
And if you ever want to do a very specific workshop on one of these, because we've talked about a lot of stuff, Amy.
Yeah, we could
do that. We could do that.
Cover the whole shebang. Like we covered.
We could drill down on one thing and just bring it into a path to 100K.
This would be a great path to 100K conversation. I think a great path to 100K. I feel like free to paid coachers or people who are brand new coachers, I want you to go establish that voice first. But in path to 100K, when you're already having clients coming in, you're not needing the podcast to be your performer. I think that'd be a great time to maybe bring you in and have further conversation.
I love it.
You're amazing.
Thanks, Amy.
So welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Goodness, friends, I wasn't lying when we said we ran the gamut. For real. Kara and I could have talked forever. And also, yes, I finally learned after an hour of talking to her and finally figured out that her name is Kara. That's what happens when I have multiple Karas and Karas in my life. And also, yes, Lou was having a time, wasn't he? And I'm not actually sure at the time of this recording how much Kara is able to clean up some of the audio there, but Lou is fine. He's much better now. He had one heck of a cough all through that recording session. Of course he did. And he was fine, like as soon as we were done. I hope that what you've just heard helps you decide what you might do next when it comes to podcasting and really understanding why you even want to and how to do it passionately and lovingly for your audience, and use Kara's tips to decide how you are going to get started if and only if it's a great fit for you now. Okay? Make sure, whether it's now or in the future, make sure that you get connected with Kara now. Kara Gott Warner. Go to her website, sign up for her emails. She doesn't send that many, but when she does, they are loaded with valuable information. And speaking of valuable information, I'm going to be dropping some news on what's coming up in Amy Latta coaching. There's going to be some big changes, some minor changes, but all of it is as simple as this. It comes down to helping you go from free to paid, go from paid to profitable, and then from profitable to prosperous. I'm very excited about what we're working on behind the scenes. Kara is a part of that work that we're doing. And you want to know what? Like every single week, this is one of the things I even asked Kara about in the episode. If there was something that you needed to hear, if you loved this conversation, if there's a coach that you know that needs to hear this, please share this podcast with them if you think that it would be of value. If you want to hit us up on the socials, that would be amazing. I am Amy Latta, and Kara, Kara, Gott, Gott, Warner, Warner. Tag us on social media. Let people know what you needed to hear today. And as anything, I can't wait to hear what you're working on, and I'm excited to see what you create in the world. Talk to you next week. Coach, it's time to sign your first free client, your first paid client, your next client, and to learn how to do it consistently and having a hell of a lot of fun along the way. This is exactly what you're going to do in Free to Paid Coach. It's the only program giving you step-by-step what to do to become a paid coach and step-by-step how to handle the roller coaster emotions that come with doing what you need to do to become a paid coach. If you know you can't not do this life coaching thing, but believing that you can do it, handling rejection, and remembering how to do all of those things shuts you down, the Free to Paid Coach community is waiting for you. Find everything that you're looking for inside. It's only $1,000, payments are available, and then you are in forever. Visit amylatta.com/FTPC to join us right now. See you inside. Let's get paid, Coach. Thanks so much for listening to the Confident Coaches podcast. I invite you to learn more. Come visit me at amylatta.com. And until next week, let's go do epic stuff.